Okay, so get ready, because today we're doing a deep dive into all things cocoa. You sent over some really fascinating research for this one, and honestly, I'm already like completely hooked. I knew chocolate had a pretty long history, but I had no idea just how far back it goes or how important it was to ancient cultures.
Yeah, it's a story that really intertwines with, the rise and fall of civilizations, religious beliefs, economic systems, even like our understanding of health and pleasure.
Totally. And it all starts, in the rainforests of Central and South America. With the Maya civilization, they were cultivating and consuming cocoa as early as 250 AD. But it wasn't just a food source for them, right? It was like deeply embedded in their spiritual practices. And in your research, you mentioned that they used cocoa in religious ceremonies, and they considered it a sacred gift from the gods.
That's right. The Maya believed that consuming cocoa actually helped them connect with the divine. And their version of cocoa was a pretty bitter beverage, often mixed with spices and chilies. And they used it in offerings to appease the gods and during rituals to seek guidance or favor.
Wow, it makes you wonder what it must have been like to experience those rituals. A spicy, bitter drink consumed in a sacred setting, with this belief that it could, like, open a channel to the gods.
Yeah, it really speaks to the power of ritual and the way that food and drink can become imbued with symbolic meaning.
For sure, and this reverence for cocoa wasn't limited to the Maya, right? The Aztecs, who came to power centuries later, also placed a high value on this precious bean. In fact, they used it as currency. I can't imagine trying to buy groceries with a handful of cocoa beans, can you?
It does seem a bit impractical, doesn't it? But it highlights just how valuable cocoa was to the Aztecs. Their Emperor Montezuma II was said to drink gallons of a special cocoa beverage every day, believing it gave him strength and vitality.
Wow, gallons a day. That's dedication. So from sacred rituals to imperial indulgence, cocoa clearly held a powerful position in Mesoamerican cultures.
And that influence would soon extend across the ocean, as European explorers arrived in the Americas and encountered this fascinating bean for the first time.
This is where the story takes a global turn, right? Hernan Cortez and other Spanish conquistadors brought cocoa back to Europe in the early 16th century. I'm curious, though, did they embrace the bitter, spicy drink favored by the Aztecs?
Not exactly. While the Spanish court was definitely intrigued by cocoa, they found the traditional preparation a bit too intense for their palates. So they started experimenting, adding sugar and vanilla to sweeten the drink.
Ah, so the European sweet tooth had a hand in shaping cocoa's destiny from the very beginning. Do we know why they preferred a sweeter taste? Was it simply a matter of preference, or were there other cultural factors at play?
That's a fascinating question. It's likely a combination of factors. European cuisine at the time tended to be much sweeter than Mesoamerican cuisine, so their palates were accustomed to a higher level of sweetness. There may also have been a desire to make this exotic new drink more palatable to a wider audience.
That makes sense. And this adaptation, this shift towards a sweeter beverage, would have a profound impact on cocoa's future.
Absolutely. It marked the beginning of cocoa's transformation from a sacred bitter drink to the sweet treat we know and love today.
So cocoa conquered the Spanish court with a little help from sugar and vanilla. But it didn't stop there, did it? Its popularity spread throughout Europe, becoming a sought-after luxury among the elite.
You're absolutely right. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, cocoa houses sprang up in cities across Europe, especially in England and France. These establishments became social hubs, where people gathered to sip chocolate, discuss the news of the day, and engage in intellectual debates.
Imagine these grand chocolate houses buzzing with conversation and fueled by the aroma of this newly sweetened exotic drink. It must have been quite the scene.
It's a fascinating glimpse into how cocoa in its evolving form became intertwined with the social and cultural fabric of European society. And this was just the beginning of a transformation that would lead to the birth of the chocolate industry as we know it today. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of cocoa.
I'm ready for more. In part one, we journeyed from ancient rituals to the European chocolate houses. Now I'm curious about the bean itself. What's the story behind this magical seed that has captivated civilizations for centuries?
Well, first we need to address a common misconception. The cocoa bean is actually a seed. It's found inside the fruit of the cocoa tree, also known as a pod.
So it's a seed masquerading as a bean. That's interesting. You mentioned in your research that cocoa trees thrive in warm, humid climates. Tell me more about where they grow and what it takes to cultivate these precious trees.
Cocoa trees, or Theobroma cacao, are native to the rainforests of Central and South America. They flourish in the shade of larger trees, creating a layered ecosystem that is vital for biodiversity. Today, the major cocoa-producing regions are concentrated in West Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, all places with the warm, humid conditions these trees need to thrive.
It sounds like cultivating cocoa is as much about nurturing an ecosystem as it is about growing a single crop.
That's a great observation. Successful cocoa cultivation requires a deep understanding of the delicate balance of the rainforest ecosystem. It's about fostering biodiversity, maintaining soil health, and ensuring the long-term sustainability of the land.
So once these precious pods are grown, how do they transform from fruit on a tree to the chocolate we love? Walk me through that journey.
It's a fascinating process. It all begins with harvesting the ripe cocoa pods. Farmers carefully cut the pods from the tree, then split them open to reveal the beans, which are nestled in a sticky white pulp.
I read that this pulp is actually edible. What's it like?
It has a sweet, tangy flavor, often compared to a mix of mango and lychee. In some regions, it's enjoyed fresh as a treat.
I had no idea. So after the beans are extracted from the pulp, what happens next?
The beans, still coated in pulp, are then placed in heaps or boxes and covered, initiating the fermentation process. This is where the magic truly begins.
Fermentation, so like making sourdough bread or yogurt.
Exactly. It's a controlled process that harnesses the power of naturally occurring yeasts and bacteria. During fermentation, the sugars in the pulp break down, producing heat and altering the chemical composition of the beans. This is crucial for developing the complex flavors we associate with chocolate.
So those bitter beans are transformed into something much richer and more nuanced through the magic of fermentation.
Precisely. The fermented beans are then spread out to dry, typically under the sun. This reduces their moisture content and further develops those rich, complex flavors.
Okay, so we've gone from pod to fermented and dried beans. What's the next step in this chocolate-making adventure?
The next step is roasting. The dried beans are carefully roasted to bring out the characteristic chocolate aroma and deepen the flavor. The roasting process also helps loosen the outer shell of the bean, making it easier to remove.
Ah, the aroma of roasting cocoa beans. Is there anything more enticing?
It's truly captivating. And once those shells are removed, we're left with cocoa nibs, the heart and soul of the cocoa bean. These nibs are packed with flavor and can be enjoyed on their own as a snack, or used in various culinary creations.
I've seen cocoa nibs sprinkled on desserts and in trail mixes. They add a nice crunch and an intense chocolate flavor.
Exactly. But to create the chocolate bars and confections we know and love, the nibs are ground into a thick paste called cocoa mass, also known as chocolate liquor. Despite the name, there's no alcohol involved. It's simply the pure ground cocoa nibs in liquid form.
Okay, good to know. So this cocoa mass is the foundation for all things chocolate.
You got it. From here, the cocoa mass can be processed to create cocoa powder, that staple ingredient in so many baked goods and beverages. Or it can be further refined to produce cocoa butter, which is essential for making chocolate bars, and is also widely used in cosmetics and pharmaceuticals.
It's incredible to see how much goes into transforming those little beans into the chocolate we enjoy. We know there are different types of chocolate, though. What makes them distinct?
The key difference lies in the composition of the chocolate, specifically the proportions of cocoa mass, cocoa butter, and sugar. Dark chocolate, for instance, generally has a higher percentage of cocoa mass, often ranging from 50% to 90% or even higher. This gives it that intense, slightly bitter flavor that many people adore.
I have to admit I'm a dark chocolate devotee myself. The higher the percentage, the better.
Then there's milk chocolate. It typically has a lower percentage of cocoa mass than dark chocolate, and it includes the addition of milk solids, giving it a sweeter, creamier flavor profile.
And what about white chocolate? Is it really chocolate at all?
That's a question that often sparks debate. White chocolate doesn't contain any cocoa mass. It's made primarily from cocoa butter, sugar, and milk solids. So while it has that creamy texture and a hint of chocolate flavor, it's missing the key ingredient that defines true chocolate.
So it's more of a cocoa butter confection than a true chocolate.
You could say that. But regardless of the type of chocolate, the quality and flavor depend heavily on the origin of the cocoa beans and the skill of the chocolate maker. Just like wine or coffee, different regions produce cocoa beans with unique flavor profiles, influenced by factors like soil, climate, and cultivation practices.
That's fascinating. So the next time I indulge in a chocolate bar, I'll have to pay more attention to the origin of the beans. It's like embarking on a flavor adventure around the world.
I encourage you to explore the world of chocolate origins. It's a journey for the senses, and you'll discover a remarkable diversity of flavors. But for now, let's shift our focus to the cultural significance of chocolate and its place in the modern world. That's where we'll pick up in part 3.
Okay, so we've explored this fascinating journey of cocoa from bean to bar. But as you highlighted in your research, there's so much more to this story, right? It's time to kind of delve into the cultural significance of chocolate.
Yeah, it's a really rich and complex tapestry, woven into the history, traditions, and rituals of cultures around the world.
Exactly. In parts 1 and 2, we touched upon the reverence that the Maya and Aztec civilizations had for cocoa, using it in religious ceremonies and even as currency. But I'd love to hear more about the specific ways they incorporated cocoa into their cultural practices.
Sure, so the Maya, for example, they believed that cocoa was a divine gift, like a bridge between the human and spirit worlds. They developed these elaborate rituals around its consumption, using it to commune with the gods, seek guidance, and mark important life events.
Wow, it's fascinating how a simple drink could hold such profound meaning and play such a central role in their spiritual lives. What about the Aztecs? How did their cultural beliefs shape their relationship with cocoa?
For the Aztecs, cocoa was associated with strength, vitality, and even power. Remember how their emperor, Montezuma II, believed that drinking copious amounts of cocoa enhanced his leadership abilities?
Yes, it's a powerful example of how a food or drink can become intertwined with cultural beliefs about leadership and authority.
Absolutely. And these cultural associations have in many ways carried through to the present day, though they've obviously evolved and adapted over time.
It's fascinating to think about how those ancient beliefs have influenced our modern relationship with chocolate.
Think about how chocolate is used today. It's a symbol of love and affection, often given as a gift on Valentine's Day or anniversaries. It's a way to express care and celebrate special moments.
Yeah, it's true. Chocolate is like the go-to gift for so many occasions. It seems to have this like universal appeal, a way of communicating emotions that transcend language and cultural barriers.
Yeah, it's a global language of sweetness.
Yeah.
And beyond its symbolic meaning, chocolate also has this remarkable ability to evoke a sense of comfort and happiness.
There's something about that rich, creamy texture and that intense chocolatey flavor that just seems to trigger feelings of pleasure and contentment.
It's like a sensory experience that can transport us back to childhood memories or provide a moment of pure bliss in the midst of a busy day.
Right. It's a little escape, a mini vacation for the taste buds. And chocolate has also become like a cultural icon woven into our literature, films, and even our everyday conversations. From Willy Wonka's chocolate factory to Forrest Gump's box of chocolates, it's become part of our collective cultural imagination.
Yeah, and those cultural references really highlight our enduring fascination with chocolate. It seems to have this ability to spark our imagination, evoke emotions, and connect us to shared experiences.
But as we celebrate the cultural significance of chocolate, it's also important to acknowledge the complexities and challenges associated with its production and consumption, right? You touched upon these issues in your research.
You're right. The mass production and global demand for chocolate have raised concerns about ethical sourcing, fair labor practices, and the environmental impact of cocoa farming.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even something as beloved as chocolate can be intertwined with complex ethical and environmental issues.
Absolutely. As the informed consumers, it's our responsibility to be aware of these challenges and to make conscious choices that align with our values. We can support companies that prioritize fair trade practices, sustainable farming methods, and the well-being of cocoa-growing communities.
Wow, this deep dive has been such a journey. We've explored the history, science, culture, and even like the ethical dimensions of cocoa. It's incredible to think about how this one plant has had such a profound impact on human civilization.
It really is. It's a reminder that even the simplest things can have rich and complex stories to tell. And by understanding those stories, we can make more informed choices about the products we consume and the impact our choices have on the world around us.
Well said. Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of cocoa. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listener who provided the thought-provoking research that inspired this deep dive, thank you for sharing your curiosity with us.
Until next time, may your days be filled with delicious discoveries.